Does this sound right? I spend much of my time, and I have for 26 years, correcting the stories that clients are told. So I kind of refer to it as when you want the truth, just call me and I'm gonna shoot straight with you. I may not tell you what you want to hear. To that point, I have some pictures I'm gonna pass around over lunch and you guys, I'm gonna put out here on the table that I want you guys to see a couple of roofs. That clients called and said, oh, this roof is fine. The home inspector said it looks fine. I want you to see the first roof. And then there's a second roof that looks much worse. And I want you to see that. In both instances, these clients called me unaware that the roof that was on their home would not be insurable much past closing. You see, the average client doesn't know that the inspection is done after closing. So we only inspect the insurance part of it after they get in the home. That's when they get the cancellation notice. We're seeing more and more of that. So again, guys, make sure you're gonna grab my swag, look at the pictures, engage over lunch. If y'all have questions, anything, I'm here to be a resource. We've recently expanded our Spanish team as well. And as a reminder, we are right, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. If you guys need something beyond those areas, I can connect you to people across the country. Last but not least, you'll hear first, and I'm not being the alarmist, guys, but I'm telling you, agents that are involved and get their hands on the transaction and facilitate connections are the ones who have much smoother transactions than ones playing catch up. Vendors don't want to only hear from agents when your client can't find a mortgage anywhere or an insurance policy anywhere. We want to work with a thick and thin. But I encourage you guys, the more you can get involved, as soon as your client knows a contract, it would be in everyone's best interest to make connections. And connections are not just to clear your client and go to insurance. Say, hey, I'm going to connect you whoever, and I'm going to be candid with you. Although I do feel that the value proposition we bring to the table is not parallel. At the same time, I would feel much better making sure your client's working with an insurance agent in town here than .com. So just be mindful, guys, that make sure you're connecting your client with somebody who speaks this language. So if you want the template to make the connection to your client, about a year ago, I was in my kids' football practice, 7:30 tonight. Looked down, I had like right now, I had a little message, and it was from Japan. That client knew to call me from Japan because her agent text introduced, and I was able to respond with my hours. Without that, we brought up the call and she didn't hold it. So again, thank you all so much for being here. Look forward to over lunch here in a little bit. And if you have any questions, please ask over lunch. Know that you guys have an advocate, you have a lifeline to the business. Make sure you have a number in your phone that we have. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matthew. Great resource. Insurance agents are great resources because, like he said, they, not everybody knows, just like with real estate, everybody operates differently. Insurance companies operate differently. And I always encourage my clients to go out and get multiple, talk to multiple agents to see what they're all about and what their, insurance companies are going to require. So real quick, before we jump into today's lunch and learn, we got some CE courses coming up in a couple locations. Just want to let you guys know next Wednesday, after our lunch and learn training, we'll have Mary Lou here doing her DISC course CE. So it's gonna be really cool. You're gonna get your DISC score. Then we're gonna talk about how to use that, how to read your clients and match their communication styles. And also find out what your best avenue of lead generation is based on your personality type. We also have a BIC up next Friday, the 18th, a Gen Up on the 23rd of May, and then a Gen Up on June 4th. That's here in the Garner location. In Fuquay at Anna Powell's office, we have a Gen Up in the morning from 9 to 1, and then Mary Lou's DISC course from 2 to 6. That's on May 13th. And then in Fayetteville, we have on April 25th, the Gen Up in person from 10 to 2. Mary Lou's DISC course on May 29th. And then right up at the very last minute, right before we could possibly do any more classes on June 9th in Fayetteville in person, we're going to do that last Gen Up for the people that have waited to the last minute. So don't be those people, but if you are, it will be available. April, do you want to introduce Jonathan? Or?
Yes,
Okay,
I would
perfect.
love to. So I'm really excited about today's topic. I'm really excited about divorce. I know that sounds terrible. Luckily, I've never been through one, but If you've not dealt with a couple going through a divorce yet, the nuances are really interesting. The attitudes, from top to bottom, the way you handle things are completely different. So I'm really excited to have Jonathan here. Fortunately, unfortunately, he is a local expert in divorces. I send him a lot of my clients that are going through divorces. If you know anyone that is attempting a divorce, regardless of how much they say is amicable, that is fine. You can have amicable divorces all day long, but it's really important that you have a mediator on both sides. So someone is helping guiding them, because as you can imagine, divorces are very emotionally charged, even when they're amicable. So Jonathan, if you want to go ahead and come on up, known Jonathan forever, for years. We met when I was a baby in the chamber, I think like 24 years old. I was running around doing real estate. And he's also a past client of ours. So very excited to have him. And we've worked a lot in tandem. So I'll try to give him some scenarios to go off of. But we've worked a lot together over the years in dealing with, especially when I go into a listing appointment and they're like, well, we're going through a divorce, but we're very amicable. And I'm like, well, have y'all spoken with a divorce attorney? And the first thing they say is, well, we don't need one because things are amicable. And I'm like, well, they all start amicable, but they don't necessarily end that way. But not only that, but just like with people using a realtor, they need to know their rights. They need to understand the process. They need to understand how to make things easier on themselves. And so I know it sounds crazy to say I'm a big advocate for a divorce attorney, but I really am. If you've ever worked with clients who refuse to use one, or one side has one and the other one doesn't, it's a mess and a half. And so I thought it'd be great. Obviously, Jonathan, I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I've got some specific real estate questions I want to ask. So go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Jonathan Breeden. I own the Breeden Law Office, which is across 36, not 42. Anyway, right over
Veterans
here.
Parkway.
Right,
Veterans.
right. Veterans Parkway. Anyway, right there across from Truist Bank. My team is now, I think, 23 people. We have 9 other attorneys plus myself, and we have some overseas staff as well. And I've been at this intersection since October of 2000. I started in Peller's Village, right there, as a solo in 2000. This intersection looked a lot different then than it does now. And I've been doing divorces and family law for 25 years. I've done literally thousands of divorces, and I've seen just about everything. Well, I think you've seen everything.
Right,
You
yeah,
think
yeah.
you've seen everything, right?
The number 5,000
Right.
transactions
So,
every time,
right.
every day, I still get surprised.
Yeah.
Well, we'll fix
So,
this out.
Yeah, so anyway, but I grew up in Laurinburg, North Carolina, a small town on North Carolina-South Carolina line, about 45 minutes south of Fayetteville, or 30 minutes west of Lumberton, or however you want to do it, or 30 minutes from south of the border. When I go on these podcasts around the country, people are like, where do you live now? I say, I live where 95 and 40 meet. Everybody knows where that is. And anybody, most all the podcast hosts know where south of the border is.
Yeah.
Because you've been down 95 and you've seen south of the border. I went to NC State. I graduated in 1996. I went to Campbell Law School. I graduated in 2000. I came right here, and I've been right here the entire time. And I'm not planning on going anywhere. We do have satellite offices in Raleigh, Angier, and Smithfield, but we primarily work out of this office here, and then we drive out to the other places as needed. And so I think, I came up with this topic, and I wrote an outline because I was like, you know what, like I want to go out and help people. Right now, I have enough help. Kind of like April, I don't have to go to court all the time, right? So I had time. I was like, I want to go out and try to educate people and talk to people. And so I thought, well, what were the top 5 mistakes that realtors make in a real estate closing? And so I wrote this up, and I sent it out to a couple of realtor groups, including April. April was like, this is great. You should come talk to my real school. And so here I am today. And so I did make a little PowerPoint about it. So you mean to go through that before you start asking me questions?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Yeah, let me do that. And yeah, we won't spend too terribly long on this, but these are the things that I see, and maybe we can, as we go through these different topics, if y'all got questions or April has questions, you can ask me, because these are the ones that I'm sure she was probably already going to ask me about. So anyway, our website, breedenfirm.com, it's got tons of resources. Before I get into this, I did write a book 5 years ago. I brought everybody a copy. Please take it. It is free. You're spouses, tell them it's actual work for your job, that you're not trying to get a divorce. You know, because a lot of people are like, if I take that book home, and I'm like, take the book, give it to somebody you know. Like, everybody knows somebody going through a divorce. Like, the divorce rate's still over 50%. But the book is very helpful, and it talks a little bit about custody, but it also talks about property distribution. And that's where y'all come in, right? That's realtors, property distribution. The single largest asset that anybody has, most everybody out here has, in Johnson and Harney counties, where most of our cases are, is the house. And everybody's had a house out here 5 years, has equity, because all the houses went up $150,000 during COVID. And that's why my new reevaluation, thanks April, has my house up. That's another thing, you know, my house just sat there, and in 6 years, they say it went up over $200,000. And I honest to God believe that's what it actually did. And I tell people that complain about that, like, would you rather have a house that when you sell it can bring that up, or pay the county a couple hundred extra more dollars in taxes? So anyway, let me see. I'm new with these PowerPoints, so let's see. So anyway, this is some more information about me. We'll try to get this PowerPoint, if they have everybody's email address, out to everybody. And we do custody, adoptions, wills, powers of attorney, guardianships, anything to do with the family. So anyway, so our goal here today is to provide information for y'all, answer your questions, become a resource for you, right? Just like the insurance agent that was here was a resource. And it's funny that he just said that, because my insurance company just told me that the next time I renew, I have to put a roof on my house. And he just talked about it. I was like, they just said, we will not insure your house next time if you don't put a roof on it, because your roof is going to be too old. So he's absolutely right about that. And, you know, help to serve your clients as well. If you know somebody that clearly they need some help, we'll be glad to try to help them. And by helping them, help you get these houses closed, because if the house doesn't close, nobody gets paid, or at least y'all don't get paid. Anyway, and truly, y'all are very important in this. Why I wanted to come here and talk to y'all and talk to other groups. Like outside of the attorneys themselves, the realtor is probably the most important person in the divorce, because they're going to get the money. I mean, this is literally for 80% of the people that come into my office, the equity in the house is probably 70% of the total assets, because of this passive increase that happened in this area so fast. And yeah, some people have 401ks and they have IRAs and stuff like that. But the biggest thing they have is this equity in the house. And the one thing that I keep saying to people, and y'all should say this to people too, is you can't take the equity in the house to Food Line and put food on your table. And so particularly women want to keep the house. It's an emotional thing. It's the kids, their schools, all that stuff. But sometimes they're not in a position to refinance to pay the other side out. And if they did, they would have to give up everything else, the 401k, the cash at the bank, all this other stuff. And they still can't go to the grocery store because they got $100,000 in a house it's not liquid, right? And so you just talk about liquid assets, not liquid assets. And so really what they need to do in almost all these cases, almost all the divorces that we do, they need to sell the house, and they just divide the proceeds, sell the house. That's where you come in, and then go buy another house, whatever. I know interest rates are higher, this, that, and the other. It doesn't matter. Like, it is very difficult for people to buy people out, because now they gotta borrow money. They gotta borrow more than what they owe. They gotta be able to qualify for a cash out, to where they can pull cash out to pay the person. And then they gotta pay the new mortgage at the higher thing. And everybody's got higher interest right now, 6, maybe it's gonna be in the 5s in 30 days, whatever. Most of these houses are in the 3s, right? That are coming and see me because it was 3 or 4 years ago when they bought it. So sort of keep that in mind. So anyway, communication, you want to communicate. On my slides a little messed up here. Fairness and knowledge is what will lead to smooth transactions and for happy clients with you. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about here today. So anyway, the first mistake, and it's the biggest mistake, and a lot of people say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to start with the biggest one: not getting both signatures on the listing agreement. Absolutely the number one mistake I see realtors make. And I know the real estate commission, you can list it with one. I've done talk to the real estate commission. And for a while, I called them like every week. And they're like, well, you can list it with one. And I'm like, my client didn't know jack about this. This is garbage. And they're like, well, they didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And guess what? When they got an offer, my client's like, I ain't signing that. My name's on that deed. You can't do jack to me about that deed. And that realtor did all that work and we had to undo it and all that stuff.
For the
So,
weird, you can't list with one. It takes two to sell. It takes one to buy, two to sell.
oh, okay, my bad.
So
Okay.
if somebody's putting one signature on the listing agreement, you need to send them to the realtor because.
Okay, all right, my bad. All right, my bad. Thank
Oh,
you.
You're good.
I'm glad you're here because I thought I've seen it with one and that's maybe what I call the real estate.
Yep.
All right, so it's one, it takes both to list.
Both to sell. Both have to agree to sell and sign the list.
Okay, all right, I've learned. See, I have to correct my presentation. All right, well, good. So anyway, but seriously, make sure that everybody's on the same page and that they understand listing agreement. Because here's the thing about divorces, y'all. In 95% of the divorces I've done, one person wants a divorce and one person doesn't. And the person that doesn't is going to be impossible to deal with. Because when you go through a divorce, you're going to go through all the stages of grief. And I'm not a psychologist, and I took that class in college, and I don't know all the stages of grief, but one of the first stages of grief is you're angry. You are mad, and you are like, and you want to get even and take it out on the other side. And then, I don't know them all, but eventually you get to the over it stage, which is kind of the last one. You process the loss, whatever it is. But in my experience, the side that wants a divorce grieve the end of the marriage for 12 to 36 months before they separated. And that side is ready to be done. The other side that didn't want it or didn't see it coming or was lying to themselves, then they didn't see it coming. And so they are going to have to go through all those stages while we're litigating the divorce and while you may be trying to sell the house, which is going to make them extremely difficult to deal with for everybody because they are really upset. And look, there is tons of mental illness in this world. I mean, tons. I don't know what percentage of people have a personality disorder or a mental illness, but it is a lot. And you're going to have to be dealing with these people, some of which have a mental illness, some of them have personality disorder, or they have both, while they are in the most stressed situation of their thing. Where are they going to live? What time are they going to get to film with their kids? Are they going to get to parent their kids? Are they going to have enough money after they pay child support and alimony to be able to live anywhere but under the bridge, right? Like, this is a terrible time. And you throw in the fact that half of the people didn't want this. And you are dealing with a powder keg of emotions and everything else. So keep that in mind. So good, get both parties aside.
I should preface this, but Jonathan doesn't sugarcoat. It's a good thing that he argues for a living, but it's something that is so important for us to keep in mind because we walk into this situation, typically we see one side. We don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. And that's why, while it sounds awful, I'm glad he's bringing this to light so that we at least have it tucked in the back of our minds as what we see is not always what we're going to get.
Correct. There's no doubt about that. All right, let's go to the second one. 2, communication. It is crucially important that you communicate with both parties simultaneously or nearly simultaneously. This allows you to diffuse emotions, discourages game playing, and it builds trust, right? You need these people to trust you so that when you tell them this is a good offer and you should take it, they believe you, right? And so if one side has information that the other doesn't, or one side thinks that you're playing favorites, and we're going to talk, that's another one I've got here in a minute, they're not, then the other side's not going to trust you, right? They're already predisposed if they're upset and they don't want to go through divorce, because another thing that happens emotionally you have to think about is the house is very, like, houses are like they're important to people, right? Like, yeah, they're a place to live, but like, that's your memories. That's your equity. That's your nest egg. That's your memories. That's where your kids live. That's where they go to school, your neighbors, all this stuff, right? And so there's these emotional connections to the houses. And for some people, the selling of the home, particularly if you're the person who doesn't want the divorce, is another sign that the divorce is actually going to happen. You have to remember, a lot of people that separate get back together. And so if you're the side that doesn't want this divorce, you are thinking, oh, we're going to get back together, right? This is just, I'm going to act better and all that stuff. And so, but when it comes time to actually sell it, that's one of those signs that it's real. Like, this is like, oh my goodness, like, we're going to sell this. Like she's serious. and it's usually women start like 72% of all divorces or something. So it's the man who's often caught off guard, almost always, you know, and even if he cheated, he's still caught off guard because she should have just stayed there while he cheated. So that's a whole nother debate. But anyway, just saying, just saying.
Where we going?
Right, yeah, so, but I'm saying, so that's another thing. So, like, everything could be smooth until you get an offer that they probably should take. And then they may start backpedaling, I need more money, blah, 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 blah. And it may not be the offer itself. It's the thought that this is the end. It's another sign that this is actually going to happen and we're not going to get back together. So you want to communicate, you want to build as much trust as possible. And I understand you can copy them both on an email, make sure everybody's got access. I hadn't bought a house in a long time, but last time I bought a house in April when she was trying to sell my house, there was like a portal and I could see the comments from the people who had seen the houses. Make sure, I guess that still exists. Make sure everybody has access to that. If you get a report, you know, let everybody know so everybody's on the same page of it being shown, not shown, that kind of stuff. All right. Number 3, you want to be neutral, right? You don't want to be taking sides. It's real easy because we're human beings to feel sorry for one or the other. Okay. Particularly women, you know, because they'll be, you know, upset or whatever. And maybe they were done wrong. And maybe their husband really is a butthole and all of that. A lot of men are, I get it. But that's not going to get this house sold. And it's not going to build the confidence and the trust with the husband if he thinks you're on the wife's side. And he's going to be looking for you to be on the wife's side because he's looking to scapegoat the entire thing. This isn't his fault. I need to kind of stop this because once again, the sale of the house is another sign of the end. And so this is all subconsciously going on through the divorce. You're like, what in the world? Like, this price is over ask. What do you mean? It's an over ask price? Like, but no, it's that. It's not the money, right? It's for the party that doesn't want to be divorced, the sell the house and stuff. It's not the money. And I don't care what the offer is. It's the thought that it's over. So keep that in the back of your mind and continue to be neutral. Don't feel sorry. And the women can tell you, oh, he was abusive and he cheated on me and whatever. I don't care what it is. Like you don't want to get emotionally tied to either one. I tell my attorneys, and this was told to me in law school, and I didn't get it, but golly, I got it when I went to court. And the first time I had a professor in law school, and he said, it was Tom Goolsbee, his attorney in Wilmington. He said, when your client goes to jail, you go to lunch. I was 24 years old. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't understand it. He also said, drink wine with your wife and don't have lunch with your clients. And so I didn't get it. But the first time your client goes to jail, and I come out, I was doing criminal defense. It wasn't long, somebody went to jail. That is a horrible feeling. The person did it. They were guilty. They absolutely should have gone to jail. But like, I felt like I had failed. But I went to lunch and I moved on from it because if I couldn't deal with the fact that my clients were going to jail, I couldn't do criminal defense. So keep that in mind. The other part is drink wine with your wife. I didn't have a wife at the time. So, you know, you want to have that relationship with your wife. And he said, don't have lunch for your clients. And to this day, I don't have lunch for my clients. We go to court. I just tried the case for 2 days in Smithfield in front of Judge Mary Wells. My client was here from out of state. She didn't know anybody. I didn't go to lunch with her. I went to lunch with my associate. We talked about what we're going to do for the afternoon because you have to keep a distance there, right? And when you're at lunch, you're going to get more of the, he's terrible, whatever. You just got to stay professional here. Like, what we need to do to sell this house? You can be friends later. I'm not saying don't be friends later. That's another thing. Be real careful representing friends, okay? That is a difficult spot to be. I know that's the #1 referral source, but in a divorce situation, you're her friend, not his. That could cause problems. You know, we all need money, but keep that in mind as well. But once again, both people got to sign the closing. That's the thing. So that's the thing. It takes 2 people to sell this house if they're on the deed. So keep that in mind. Let's see. What's the? Well, it's not going to the next one. Let me try. Well, shoot. I hit the one to the run.
Oh, that's my fault.
Okay.
It's because I let some people in the chat.
Okay.
Is that the next one?
Yeah, that's the next one. Yeah. 4, right. Know the legal documents. Okay. If there is a separation agreement that governs the sale of the house, or if there's an equitable distribution order from the court that governs the sale of the house, you need a copy of it and you need to read it and you need to understand it. I have passed out here today some of the standard language we use in separation agreements and equitable distribution consent orders. Property distribution in North Carolina is called equitable distribution. That is where the court is charged with equitably dividing the property among the parties as equal as possible. There are reasons for it not to be exactly 50-50. 95% of the time, they're going to try to make it 50-50. And so if you can't reach a separation agreement and you go to court, you're going to file an act for equitable distribution. We talk about that in the book. There's a chapter about it. And as part of the distribution of the property, the house gets sold. One thing to remember, courts can't order the house sold. So when people start bickering and stuff, you can't go to the judge. The judge can't order the house sold. That goes back to agrarian, the king, English common law. You don't want the government actor selling land, right? And that's basically what we're doing. We're selling land. So the court can award the house to one party or the other, and they can make the other party pay the other one out, but can't actually order the house sold. Now, if they say you got 60 days to pay $75,000 distributive award because you're going to get this house, the court didn't order you to sell the house, but if you can't refinance it, you're going to have to sell the house, and you're going to have to sell it quickly because you got to pay this award. So that's part of the trick. But a lot of the language that we use, it's in what I passed out, is the other thing is we see in divorces, the party that is in the house, particularly if the other party is paying the mortgage in lieu of child support, which happens the vast majority of cases when initial separations, particularly if the husband's making more money than the wife and the wife's still in the house, doesn't actually want to move. So they're going to want to make this difficult, right? They're going to not want to take an offer. It's not going to be available to show. When you go to show it, it looks like crap. You know what I'm saying? Because they want to make it look like they want to sell, but they don't actually want to move. Back to the emotional ties to the house and the kids and the school and all of that. So keep that, you got to keep that in mind as well. But if they have these documents, if a separation agreement has been signed or an order has been entered, and in the majority of cases there won't be, but in some there are, particularly the high conflict ones, you need to get a copy of it and see it and understand it. And what they normally say is they're going to list the house, and you know, if they can't agree, I just put April Stevens. I just put April Stevens in there. Like if they can't agree, sometimes they can't agree, right? So we got to decide how we're going to pick the realtor. It has to be a licensed realtor. It has to be on MLS. We're not going to somebody who's selling it out of their. No. I want it actually listed. I want them to be motivated sellers. I define in my agreement what is a motivated seller. They need to make it available for showings. It needs to be clean. They shouldn't reject any closing showing that they get at least 24 hours notice of. They need to be responsive to the realtor, right? They need to answer the realtor's emails, calls, let them write back. You know, those types of things. It also says we're going to list the house at a price that the realtor says, because they're probably not going to agree. And then the price is going to drop 2% or 3% every 30, 60, or 90 days. And they have to take any offer within 3% of the current list price, or they have to both agree to reject it. And that's the key that you want to see in any agreement, because you work your butt off and you do all this stuff and you come with an offer. And I know that wasn't a big deal. In a couple, 2-3 years ago, everything was over ask. That is not where we are now. We may be there in 6 months. We're not there now. But so what would happen would be the realtor would come for full price offer. Heck, they would come an overpriced. They come an over ask offer. And the wife would say, no, I need more. Not because she needed more money. She didn't want to move. And then the realtor does work. Now, if you have your listing agreement and you bring a full price offer, most listing agreements say you're entitled to the fee, and you could say, okay, fine, sue them for it. I don't think that's what y'all do, but I think you could if you wanted to, but I'm just saying so that becomes important, right? And look, a lot of times when people are trying to get the most money as possible, if you come with an offer within 3%, they will agree to counter or not take it or think they can get better. But the party that's not in the house, needs to have something to force the other side to take the deal. And so that's where that language of any offer within 3% of the current list price must be accepted unless they both don't agree. And then, of course, they need to make the house available for showings. It needs to be clean, stuff like that. So make sure that if they have the language, and look, if not, you can take this and you can do your own little contract between them. I don't know what y'all want to do, and maybe try to get them both to agree. You can add it to your listing agreement. I don't know what the rules on that are, but like that might be something y'all could do. I don't know if you can do that, April, but like so that you can at least know that you're not going to get stuck, you know, doing 10, 11 months worth of work, having 7, 8, 9 offers, and somebody keep saying that they don't want it. April just had one we talked about on Monday. That was a case I was in briefly about a year ago where she kept coming with offers and it just wasn't enough for the wife. And the wife's not there and she's not paying the mortgage, or at least she wasn't when I was in the case. You know what I mean? Well, I need more, I need more. And the husband's like, it's all he can do to keep paying his mortgage. His mortgage was like $2,500 a month. I said, well, a lot of money. And so eventually the wife capitulates for, I think, 5,000 to 7,000 less than the offer they had 6 months ago. I mean, that, and April had to do all that work and her team had to do all that work. I think they had listed for like 10 months. It's crazy, right? But if they'd have had something that would have forced these offers to within 3% of the list price, right? They were good offers. I mean, April wouldn't bring it if it was a bad offer. So, I mean, that kind of stuff. So that could have gotten that house done quicker. They could have moved on. My former client wouldn't have had to keep working overtime and everything else to try to keep this mortgage up, you know, because there was some equity in this house. So, you know, sort of keep that in mind as well. And the fifth one is optimize the listing agreement. Right. So you want to make sure that the listing agreement is clear, that they understand it, that they've read it, that they know what their responsibilities are, you know what your responsibilities are to them. It needs to be priced realistically. A house that's not priced right isn't doing anybody any favors whatsoever, and it's just going to lead to disappointment and lack of trust. Mm-hmm. And if you've got somebody, I know this is hard, but if you've got somebody that is flat refusing to list at a reasonable price, let them go. Just let it go. It's not worth the effort. I'm telling you. I know y'all are new and everybody's got bills to pay, but if they're not wanting to be realistic on the list price, they're not going to be realistic on the sales price, and your time and money and efforts would probably be belt somewhere else and let it be somebody else's problem, particularly in a divorce. But I would probably say that in general.
I was just getting ready to say, so talk us through that, you know, because we have our own scripts of trying to get people to realistically price, you know, how long do you want to sit? But that is probably the number one issue and confrontation that we have is we have one person who is in agreement and the other person is not. And like I said, it takes two to sell. They both have to agree. So talk us through kind of how you're able to overcome that as an attorney.
I mean, I know I'm going to say Zillow, and that's going to make y'all all cringe, but you know, it is a quick answer to something in general, and it's not perfect. And my experience is maybe 10% or so, but at least gets us in a universal ballpark. You know what I mean? I also sometimes have reached out to April and got her to send me a CMA, a comparative market analysis. I guess y'all still do that, you know, for some, even though it's not your client, she'll have somebody do it and send that to me. You've done that. I also just get an appraisal. I mean, if, you know, pay the $400 or $500 and actually get an appraisal. I had some, you know, somebody was a little upset with us yesterday because it was a man who didn't want a divorce, who had a lot of equity in his home, over $100,000. And he was upset that the price was what it was. And it's our fault that we picked the bad appraisal. And if I said the appraiser's name, it's one that everybody here knows, and they're a good appraiser. It's just what it is. And you know, so because they don't want to have to pay the wife who left her part of the house as a distributive award, not because she doesn't own it or whatever, not that he can't afford it, because she left. And when you leave, you know, controlling, narcissistic type people, all hell is going to break loose. And that's going to make it even more difficult. So you get some of that. But the other thing is we've run into, and I've learned this over the years, not all houses are set for traditional financing, right? You have to have flooring to get traditional financing. It can't be missing carpet in 2 or 3 rooms. It can't have dog urine stains and all this stuff to actually get regular financing. You need to learn very quickly what houses qualify for traditional financing and what don't. And I'm not here to teach that, maybe April can, but that is very important because if you can't get traditional financing, the price is going to be 25% lower, and you're going to have to get a cash buyer, which means it might be an investor, probably from China or other investors in the area. And that's going to lower the price. And Zillow doesn't know that it's missing flooring. Zillow doesn't know it has a bunch of holes in the wall. Zillow doesn't know the HVAC hasn't worked in 2 years. All of these things you have to have. I just had a home inspector on my podcast the other day. I had the best time talking about things he looks for. Home inspectors, talk to home inspectors, but very quickly learn how to spot things that are going to be problems for traditional financing so that you can price it correctly. Because no matter how hard you sell, most people need a mortgage. They need a Fannie Mae, whatever it is. If you can't get the loan, then it's going to have to be cash, and cash is going to be a lot less. Is that right, April?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuances about that, but then again, it's going back to the perspective. Whoever's living in the house thinks it's great, thinks it's fine, just like it is because they live there. The person who's moved out is typically, now again, we have the exact opposite situation, but typically the person who's moved out is like, where's my money? Where's my money? And the person living in it doesn't want to go through the heartache and headache of selling. And so it's a very unique conversation that you have to have. So if you got a second, let's do some role play.
I've gone through the 5 points. So yeah.
Let's do some role play because this happens so often that I go into a listing appointment and 9 times out of 10, this is, we teach you want both sellers to be there every time. If it's not an amicable situation, you're going to be having 2 different appointments, and that's the way you want it because you don't want to be the person sitting there while they're fighting because been there, done that. It's really awkward. So I go on 2 different appointments and I go to one and the wife is living in the house, let's say, and the house is tore up because there's kids, there's dogs, there's this, there's that. I know what the house is not going to sell for. I know what the house probably will sell for, what it's not going to sell for, which is what the wife is telling me she thinks it's worth because she lives there, it's fine. Husband has already moved out, is now paying another mortgage or another rent or something like that, just needs to get his money so he can feel like he can move on. Doesn't matter who left, who what, this is the scenario. So I now have to meet with the husband and say, well, due to the condition of the home, I feel like the house is worth this. Well, typically, unfortunately, the husband's like, well, I just want my part. And then there's a conversation. So let me ask this, does it matter with the equitable distribution, who left or what was the reason?
No.
Because I get that every time I meet with it. Well, I didn't tell him to leave. He's the one who decided to leave. He's the one who's making this happen. So therefore, shouldn't he have to pay this? And I'm sitting there like, man, I went to real estate school. I did not go to law school. It is not for me to decide. So talk us through how you have those conversations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right. And so in equitable distribution does not. And look, it's 50-20 in the statutes. You can Google NCGS 50-20. The statute's about 2 pages long. It's not written in hieroglyphics. It tells you that it should be equal, and it's only not equal if you have these 20 things, and these 20 things are rarely ever come into being. And for most judges, even if you have them, they're not going to find it. So the court, when it comes to he cheated, he left, he's a butthole, that may matter in custody. And it might matter in post-separation support and alimony. If one spouse, if in that situation, if the dependent spouse, the spouse that needs post-separation support or alimony, which is money over and above the child support from one spouse to the other spouse to pay their bills, that dependent spouse, if they had a sexual affair with somebody else, cannot collect. Okay. And if the other spouse who left that has to pay it had a sexual affair, it doesn't really matter. They were going to pay anyway. But that's nothing to do with equitable distribution or the house itself. That's where that comes in. But I have literally gotten $100,000 equitable distribution awards for people in prison for trafficking cocaine. I got $275,000 for a man who was strung out on pills and oxy and all this stuff. And he stood over his wife at a golf club and he was going to hit her like a 7-iron and murder her. And he still left with $275,000 of her 401k. He didn't get any alimony. He didn't get any post-separation support. Didn't have any kids, but he's still left with, so I'm saying it doesn't matter in the property distribution. The only thing that matters in the property distribution is if one side has laid waste to the property, and that doesn't even do with the house. Like if the husband's going and spent $10,000 on the mistress and it's on a credit card, that's not going to count as a marital debt. They've gone out. Or you'll see this in what y'all do. One side has maxed out the line of credit on the house right at the end, right before they leave. That may affect the net proceeds. And if you see that, then the side that's on the other side of that needs to add one where the lady went and bought 2 CDs and a diamond necklace, to max out and she maxed out the line of credit on the house. None of that was for the marriage. I got that back for my client. In the distribution.
Well, and along those lines, and don't let me forget to come back to communication, but along those lines, what I've dealt with in the past is, okay, we're getting ready. I finally got everybody on the same page as far as the price goes, the situation, when we're going to list, everybody knows the plan. And then we get ready to sign. They're like, well, now you're going to make sure that I get my 70%, right? And I'm like, again, I am a realtor. I am not an attorney. That is not my job, is to make sure you get this. So then I asked them for the, what did you call it?
Well, either the separation agreement or the equitable distribution consent order or the equitable distribution order from the judge.
Okay.
The thing that's going to govern what happens to the house.
So I love that he's saying that, and everybody remember that equitable distribution consent order, because number one, 99% of the time when you go to these appointments initially, I say, so do y'all have divorce attorneys? Like I say it like proactively thinking, I hope y'all do. 9 times out of 10, they're like, no, we're not. It's all amicable. We're going to be fine. So we don't need attorneys. And I'm like, so then my question is, so you've got your equitable distribution consent. And then they stop and they're like, what is that? And I'm like, so y'all have figured out that how everything's going to be split 50-50. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. Because of this, they're going to do this. And because of this, they're going to do this. And I'm like, I just want to caution you because I have been down this road before, and here's what happens. Everything starts amicably, and I don't want to put this pressure on y'all, but I think it's worthwhile you having at least a consultation with a local attorney to figure out what the law says and what you're truly entitled to, because they start amicable until things get squirrely. And then and when I tell y'all it happens fast, good gracious, it happens fast. They are waving in the front yard until the sign goes up, and the husband's mad about the sign messing up the side, and it's your realtor that you called that messed up our side, and then and this thing has gone downhill so fast and in the blink of an eye. And sometimes it has to do with who's staying in the house. Well, I don't want to leave during the week. Well, we've got kids in the house. I don't want to disrupt their schedules. And then the husband's like, well, we talked about this. And the next thing you know, you're in the middle of a marital fight, which is not fun either. So that's why I say use this as your kind of like we tell for sale by owners. Oh, so you've already filled out your residential property disclosure statement that by general statute you have to give to everybody when you're selling the property. And they're like, what are you talking about? The mineral oil and gas rights. General statute says you have to give that to anybody you're selling a property to as well, whether or not you're using a realtor. And then all of a sudden they go, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I was supposed to know to do this. So we're going to use that verbiage to constantly say, so you guys have already figured this out. So you break down every asset you have and you've already decided how to split it. And they're like, well, no. All right, let's start there. And if not, just because you have attorneys does not mean y'all are going to fight it out in court. This means you are getting an advisor, just like you hired me to be your real estate advisor. You are getting an advisor with regards to how best to work out the details of finalizing the ending of the marriage and how everything is to be split.
Right, and that's the thing. And ultimately, the closing attorney can only write a check in both names. You know what I mean? Unless he's been given specific instructions otherwise, right? He has sold a house that 2 people own. And he's either gets the order or the separation agreement that says what he can do with it, or he's just going to write a check to both of them. Now, sometimes if I get involved in the middle of it, I will have them both agree to redirect the check into my trust account, and I will hold the money until we figure out what's going to happen. We do that several times a year, where I'll end up getting $200,000 or $300,000, and it's just in my trust account. And I hold it until the court says what we're going to do with it. The court can enter a restraining order that says, I'm going to hold it until the court tells me how they want it distributed. So you can do that too.
And I have always been very nervous about asking what does your distribution say? Because I feel like I'm not trying to get in your business. But what I've also had happen in the exact same scenario we were talking about is the buyer goes under contract, they do their inspection, they want repairs done. The husband has $0 left because he's doing everything he can just to keep a roof over his head and keep paying for this house because he doesn't want to lose the equity and let it go into foreclosure. Wife's living her best life. And she immediately screenshots me their court order that says he's to pay for all repairs. And so I'm like, I'm not even trying to negotiate repairs. I'm just trying to negotiate a warranty at this point. And so she's like, hands up, hands out. I don't have to do anything per my court order. And so now I'm having to go negotiate with myself essentially on how we're going to make this happen because we're too close to the finish line not to cross it. And the poor seller deserves to be able to move on. And I know I say poor seller, I only talked to one of them, but anyway. All of that to say it is important that you ask for that up front so you know how it's going to be handled because when it gets down to it and that also comes across and then they're really looking at real numbers and real money, that's when the teeth really come out. And you better not let her get her check before I get my check because if she gets her check, then I know if I don't and then they don't even want to sign the check together. They don't want to be at closing together. They don't want to go to the bank together. And so when I tell you, you have to have so many proactive conversations, I'm not kidding. And that's why I wanted to bring him here and start going down this path because
To scare everybody from ever doing a divorce.
No,
Tell us it's gonna be okay at the end.
it is going
I'm
to
just like,
be
oh my
okay.
God, I'm lucky to have mine have gone okay. Oh, I don't want to do another one ever, but no.
Listen, it cannot, everybody knows the same thing about selling a house. There's nothing about selling a house that's not overwhelming. No matter how much you prepare, how good your real estate is, you still got to deal with the packing and the moving and the changing and everything. I can't take that overwhelm, but what I can do is put a plan in place so that nobody is constantly living in a state of emotional distress.
Yeah.
So let's do that. So two main things to make that happen. For one, make sure you understand how, when, and who you're communicating with. I have had divorce situations go so good. I mean, literally, my heart still hurts that these past clients of mine are divorced because I'm like, are y'all back together yet? Because I felt like I was the child that was a product of this divorce because I've sold them
Yep.
4 houses
Yep.
and it broke my heart. And when we sat with them, we sat at the kitchen table and the husband's like, whatever it takes to make this easier on her, whatever we need to do. And y'all, it's the craziest thing. The house they bought is the house that I had the worst divorce situation in. I now think this house is cursed. I hope I never sell it again. The worst divorce situation, when I tell you the woman called me crying every day, I am not kidding. And it was just a very dramatic divorce. And it was so bad, I could not copy them on the same email. And I had to make sure everybody else involved with the transaction did not put them on the same line of communication because it would send her into a downward spiral. So 2 opposite ends of the spectrum in the exact same freaking house. I'm not kidding. And so that's why I start off with how is our communication going to go? What does this look like? Husband's very busy, doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Just tell them what to do, when to do. Luckily, they had an attorney who had everything lined out because if I would have had to have gotten them to agree on anything, it would have never happened. So luckily, they had a divorce attorney who had one of these that said, we're going to list it at the price or within 3% of what the realtor that is ordered by the court, which was me, says. And after 30 days, if it doesn't sell, which yeah, this is in like 2009, 2010, so nothing sold in 30 days. If after 30 days, you reduce it 3%, after another 30 days. So I had a guideline. I knew that on the 30th day of every month, I was checking in with them. And I'm like, guys, here's where we're at. Here's what we're going to do. I didn't have to do the back and forth of the feedback says this and everything else. I was like, it hasn't sold. I've done everything I said I was going to do. Here's where we're at per our agreement. That is the best thing you can do for yourself if you have 2 disgruntled clients. If they're amicable, that's great. I still think this is, hey, let's use this as a guideline. Let's not go into it thinking we're going to have to do price reductions. Let's not go into it doing this, but let's keep the heartache out of having to have these conversations over and over again.
Yeah, and that's where, and the repairs are also a huge argument, and we have to deal with those sometimes too, because literally she's right. Oftentimes his husband is somewhere else and it's all he can do to pay that mortgage and rent where he's at, and he doesn't have an extra $2,500 to $3,000 to do these repairs. And so if you're seeing that there's going to be repairs, maybe even at the listing appointment, like you're walking the property and you're like, That's not gonna work. I mean, you gotta have rails that go down the steps to sell a house, right? And the rail broke, but they never fixed it. Well, the rail's gotta be there, or the house can't, like, I don't know all the stuff, but I know that's one of the things that comes up, right? The deck's got a hole in it. You can't sell a house with a deck with a hole in it if it's more than so many feet off the ground or whatever. So like that kind of stuff, you need to have those conversations early, and I don't know if there are repair people or handy people that will work and get paid after the closing. I don't know. I know that's how people who build houses often, the carpet guy and the sheetrock guy, they don't get paid till the house closes. I don't know if y'all know people that do that on just general handyman repairs. Maybe there are people that maybe they don't, but if you know those people, that might be helpful.
Yeah, no,
But-
again, just go and having a plan. If you see repairs, say this is something we're gonna have to address. Do we want to address it now? If so, let's go ahead and set aside this pot of money to go ahead and have these repairs made before we put on the market. Or can we both be in agreement that we're gonna market the home as is with no repairs to be done, which we understand. Let's knock us down about 3 to 5% because we're selling it as is. Or do we want to go ahead and agree that up to this amount can be used for repairs and it's going to be split equally from both sides? So again, you have to come in playing a chess game, but you are always the pawn in the middle, unfortunately. You are always the one that has to stay on both sides because you technically do work for both of them, whether one of them hates you or not, because the wife's attorney picked you. And I get to hear that all day, every day when they call too. Like nothing I do is right because the wife's attorney picked me. It doesn't matter, but it's important that you make sure they know that you are neutral because a lot of times whoever is the hurt one is going to try to play you against the one who is not hurt. And you have to constantly say, I hear you, I understand. Please keep in mind, my role in this is to get you to the finish line so that you can distribute this and you can both move on. You have to keep bringing them back to why we're here and what our job is and also what our job is not. But
Right. And what you could do with $75,000 in the bank.
right,
Because if that's what the half of the equity, is probably going to be like, I mean, there's that because most people are, 54% of Americans can't make a $400 car repair bill without going to a credit card. So you're talking about handing people $50, $75, $100,000 the houses out here because they've gone up so much. Like, I know you hating, but like,
mhm,
wouldn't you like to have $80,000 in 2 weeks?
right.
I'm just saying, like, I mean, there's some of that. And I talk about that with them like, okay, we can go back and forth. You can keep paying me $400 an hour, but wouldn't you just rather have the $80,000 at the closing? Like, I mean, that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
so there's that too, but right. And once again, it's all about the emotions, right? It's nothing y'all did or anything. It's just people going through a divorce and not wanting to see the end, wanting to mess with the other side however they can, because it's like a 3-year-old or like the dogs, like they're going to get attention, whether it's good or bad. And now my teenagers a little bit too, but I'm saying like that's it, right? And so if you're a controlling person, and women are just as controlling as men, I don't even get a bad rap, but like if you're a controlling person and now you've separated and you're losing control, and you want the other side to pay attention to you, whether it's good or bad. And I can sit up here and talk for an hour about domestic violence, this, that, and the other. But basically, what you're going to end up with is this sort of yo-yo, right? And so I'm going to be completely amicable, whatever you say, but you list this house and you're not getting back together and it's been 2 or 3 weeks. Well, now I'm going to not agree to sell the house and I'm going to be a butthole about it because that's a way to be nice and mean. Nice and mean. This yo-yo. It's like, I'm going to punch you in the face. Here's a dozen roses. Because you made me punch you in the face because you didn't do what I said, right? But that's what happens. And as people start to lose control, and in a separation, they've lost control. And all of my, and I know you're going to keep like, what the hell? But in all of the cases where I've had somebody, and I've had multiple clients be murdered, and I've had multiple clients commit murder, right? You do this, it happens. It always happens after the separation. Not trying to scare you, I'm just saying it's what it is, because they've lost control.
Right.
And so that's part of what you start to see when she's saying, oh, it's fine, we're great, whatever she wants, we're going to do. But that's not that's because that's being nice. Because if I'm being nice, maybe she won't do this and we'll get back together and we won't actually separate. But if it starts to look like that's not going to work, then I'm going to be a real butthole to everybody, including her and the real to everybody else, because I'm trying to get control of the situation back.
Right.
It's all about control. And so if being nice doesn't get control, then being mean, I'm going to try to, and they're going to go back and forth and back and forth. And that's what you're going to be looking at. And you're stuck in the middle just trying to sell a house.
two more points real fast and we're gonna go because we're out of time. But one of the other things is not everybody will tell you they're going through a divorce. So the listing appointment I went on when everything was amicable, it didn't hit me and I didn't know it until like the third time I went out there. And then I was like, I was wondering why your clothes were upstairs. So be looking for these cues because some people don't want people to know their business or they think it threatens their financial position and people know that they're going through a divorce. I mean, we've heard that, if you see only one spouse's clothes in the closet, we're going through like, oh, they're getting divorced. They must be separated. Here's what's happening here. Or you walk in and it looks like a bachelor pad and it's like, there's two people on the deed. We know what happened, So some people are very quiet about it, but it's important that you do know that because it's in the middle of the transaction and towards the end where you're going to get caught in the crosshairs if you don't know that. And the other thing, like as he's talking, I'm sitting here going, my team is going to come up with a little thing of standards. This is how we handle divorces. And I know you said you're amicable and I hear you. We have done over 100 divorce cases and here's what works. We're going to go into it, making sure we're on the same page so that as the market changes, your emotion changes, your physical, where you're staying changes. What doesn't change is our plan, and that gives them back that little bit of control. They agree to it in the beginning, so they're controlling the process. Both of them are, and then you are in the driver's seat as well. Any questions before we go?
I've talked.
Yeah.
I-
You do get paid to talk for a living.
No, I do get paid to talk for a living. No, I absolutely, but seriously, we've got resources. Let me see. So anyway, right. So, be proactive, reduce financial stress to your client, gain the trust you need to get both parties to agree to the sale, ensure a smooth process, optimal transition, build a successful business. If you have any questions or whatever, we'd be glad to help. Anybody can have the book can be downloaded from my website for free. So they can go there, breedenfirm.com, download the book. They can come by my office and pick up a book. If you want, come by and get copies and take it to divorce listings, give the book out. Like I said, I wrote the book. I don't have to pay that much for them. I'd be happy for anybody to have it. I want people to have it. They can get it on Kindle for $14.95 off Amazon or whatever. But it talks a little bit about selling houses and a little bit about divorce in general. But seriously, we want to be a resource. We've got lots of stuff. So we have our website. We have the book itself. We have a YouTube channel where we have over 150 informational videos where I'm answering common questions, like some of the ones you heard me talk about today. They can go there and watch those as well. Of course, I have my podcast, Best of Johnston County. If y'all have not listened to that, it's a great podcast. I'm just tooting my horn. I interview interested people this week. It's Rick Hester, Johnston County manager. Last week, it was Lori Jones, the general manager of the North State Food Hall. 2 weeks ago for that, it was the mayor of Selma. It's just people, Butch Lauder, all these interesting people I meet around Johnston County. I just interview them in my office and we talk about what they do, why they love Johnston County. We had Donald O'Meara, y'all might know Donald in Smithfield. So that kind of stuff. But also every 5th or 6th episode, I answer family law questions. And so I have talked about this on an episode. So they can go there and listen and find it. Just look, scroll back where I talk about houses and distributions. Raina and I having a conversation. So that information is out there as well. My website has probably 400 pages and 100 blogs. Like I've been doing this for a long time. Like there's so much information. And as April said at the very beginning before I started talking, if you don't know your rights, what rights do you have? And that's the thing. That's why I'm here today. That's why April's doing this. Like I want people to know because these houses need to sell, right? They need to sell and they need to sell yesterday and these people need to move on. And that's what I want y'all to do and do it successfully. And if you get good at this, there's a ton of money to be made. I mean, I had lunch not that long ago with a lady and she only does divorce cases in Raleigh.
Well, and not only that, but there's no glowing referral better than one who came to the worst situation of their life and came out like, the only bright spot, my realtor made it easy.
So anyway, so take a book, take a card, reach out to me. Be glad to answer any questions. Go to our YouTube channel, our podcast. It's the information's out there. Be glad to help y'all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
That sounds awesome. You make me want to come watch you litigate.
Yeah, no.
You're a great presenter. I like.
If you'll have me come back, I can do like some mindset stuff. I don't do this, but I can do like branding. I can do like how you scale. Like you got to know your leads, your sets, your shows, your hire rate, your referral rate. You know, you gotta know how long it's taking you to sell houses, you know, so you can project your income and how to get more leads. I mean, I'm not really, you're a better marketer than me, but I know a little bit about that kind of stuff, just from some of the numbers you need to know. I can
Yeah.
come back and talk about that.
No,
You want me
that's
to?
awesome.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Sean.
And we don't have the answers to them on our podcast or our website. Then you send it to us, we will make a video for you that you can just give out to your customers for the rest of forever. Watching us.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
And lunch is out there now. If you guys are hungry, it smells.
I was messing with all that after class last night.